Andy, tolerance is quite an important virtue in modern day culture, but actually aren't Christians intolerant?
Do you know, I hear that kind of question quite a lot, and I think one of the reasons that people sometimes wonder that, or that accusation is thrown at Christians, is we live in an age that's got really confused about a number of things. And one of the things we've got confused about in our current culture is the fact that, of course, it's people who are equal. And built into the Christian faith, there's this very, very, very significant belief in the value and dignity of all human beings. And of course, Christians were at the forefront of developing things like human rights and all of these things. So people are equal, but ideas are not. So just because I value you as a person doesn't mean I value all of your ideas. But we live in a culture that's kind of collapsed those things. So sometimes Christians are assumed to be intolerant because we say, I'm not sure I agree with that idea. That's the first thing. But there's a much bigger issue going on here that I really want to talk about, Alan, and it's, quite frankly, I think tolerance is a ludicrous word. It's a ludicrous word. If there's one thing I can't tolerate, it's the word tolerance. And I love saying this in certain audiences because the reaction you get, if I could take one word out of the dictionary, it would be the word tolerance. Why? Well, think about what we normally tolerate. Normally we use the word tolerate or tolerance to describe our reaction to things that are a little bit beneath us but can't do any better. So for example, until recently my then 3-year-old son had latent artistic tendencies, and he would practice those on the walls, on the carpet, on the sofa, on his sister. We had to basically lock down every crayon in the house. And we tolerated it because he was 3. We tolerate the family dog when it weeds on the couch for the 3rd time in a month. It's an animal, it can't do any better. So we tolerate things that haven't come up to the right standard, but are not quite at our level. So in other words, if we then apply the word tolerance to an adult human being who's on the same level as you or I, how incredibly arrogant. How incredibly arrogant to look another human being who's our intellectual equal in the eye and go, oh yeah, bless you, I tolerate you. That is quite frankly the most arrogant, bigoted, self-righteous term I can possibly think of. And I also put it to people watching this, nobody watching this video wants to be tolerated. We don't want other people to tolerate us. We want other people to listen to us. We want other people to take us seriously. If people disagree with us, I think we want people to tell us why, but then take our ideas with the serious merit that they deserve. Nobody wants to be tolerated. So tolerance is this really strange word. But that means if we're going to do that, if we're going to take each other seriously, even though we may disagree with people's ideas, we need a foundation for doing that. And the problem is we live in an age where for so many people, their identity is bound up with their beliefs. And you challenge their beliefs and you challenge the things they hold dear, and suddenly you're challenging their very identity and they get all precious and defensive. Christians, on the other hand, should not respond like that, because we know as Christians that our identity comes not in our beliefs or our opinions. Our identity comes in what Jesus has done for us. It's a rock solid identity that means I can afford to listen to other people, take their ideas seriously, because they shouldn't threaten me even though I disagree with them. And of course that model for treating people with respect and dignity, even if they are different to us, even if, heaven forbid, they're our enemies, the best model we have as Christians for that is Jesus, who did that to us. Because Jesus, even while we were his enemies, even while we wanted nothing to do with him, still went to the cross on my behalf and your behalf, and showed us how much he's willing to engage with us by the love that he demonstrated there. Which brings me to my last problem with tolerance. Tolerance is cheap. It's cheap to look at somebody and go, oh, they couldn't do any better. They're just foolish. Oh, of course they'd hold that opinion. They're not as smart as I am. Tolerance is cheap and tolerance is lazy. By contrast, love is expensive and love is pricey and love is costly. I am so glad that at the heart of the Christian faith stands the message of a God who didn't tolerate us, who didn't look at the way we lived our lives and gone, oh, human beings, that's the best they could do, but a God who loved us so much that he gave his only son, that through him we might know forgiveness and peace and welcome into his family, no matter what our background or our baggage.